Kia ora team, Noel Willoff here, host of the Beyond the Surface podcast. Thanks so much for tuning into today's episode. But before we get started, I've noticed that over 93% of you watching on YouTube do not subscribe. So if you are enjoying the content and these conversations, please make sure you go hit subscribe on the button below. Also, before we get started, please go check out our official sponsor of the podcast, Moana Road. They've got a whole range of awesome products available at the website. So go check them out in the link in the description below to help us reach more of the guests on that you love. Omer, welcome to the podcast, bro.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks, Noah.
Thanks so much for jumping on, man. And, you know, we've known each other quite like from a light touch component for a few years, always like seeing each other on LinkedIn. So yeah, stoked you could find some time to come down to Wellington and jump on. Throughout this episode, like, dude, you're super young. How old are you? You 30, 29?
27. 28 this year.
There you go. You're like basically my age exactly.
Yeah.
You've set up a marketing company. You've retired your mum. You've set up an equity fund. Now you're running like a digital sort of e-commerce company called Atlas Studios. You've done a lot in your, like sort of 27 years, bro. Like, where do you get your energy to create from?
Thank you. I guess it's a funny one because I think it goes back to kind of my upbringing as well. Like a lot with my mom, my grandma. My dad always used to work overseas or just different cities in the country. He was in tourism, so it was just always my mom and grandma basically raised me, right? And I think they just instilled so much in me from such a young age. There's probably a big effect of that. And then I come to New Zealand. They sent me to New Zealand by myself to kind of study and live here in year 9. So I was 13, turning 14. I think that kind of gave me this confidence, but also out of necessity to just kind of figure things out and be self-sufficient from a pretty young age. And then just a lot of things that happened through life that kind of forced me to go, okay, well, I'm either sinking or swimming. So which way do I go? I think a lot of the time it's been out of necessity rather than kind of this innate thing. That's incredible, bro. And because you grew up in Turkey, was it Kyrgyzstan? Yeah, Kyrgyzstan. I was born there, but then left pretty early. And then spent most of my childhood in Turkey. Lived in the US for a bit. That's where my sister was born, and then moved to Turkey and kind of primary school, middle school over there. Yeah, take us back to that playground that you've mentioned a few times with like the rusty slide. That would get really hot in summer. Like, describe your sort of upbringing to the audience growing up in a country like Turkey, bro. What does that look like as a young fella? That's a good one. that one. So that slide you're talking about, it was in Kyrgyzstan. I was Kyrgyzstan is an ex-Soviet bloc country. Many people I tell to, they immediately go, oh, like Kazakhstan, like Borat. I'm like, yeah, kind of like similar neighbors. But do imagine a kind of scenario like that, right? It's Soviet bloc buildings and look, don't get me wrong, my grandma and mom, they were kind of born there and they grew up there, and I spent a few summers there, and the kind of building block in the neighborhood, there was this kind of park in the middle where all the buildings and all the children from there would just go down there and play. And in summer, nothing to do, so I'm going down there, meeting all the other kids. And some of the games we were playing, which is crazy to think about. We'd play tag, but with like rocks, or like throw rocks at each other. It's like your tag, I had like a rock thrown in my head, and it was like bleeding.
It's one way to create enemies, eh?
Yeah. And then like it was kind of fun for us, but my grandma didn't really like it. She was like, "Oh, this is not very safe." We'd get like bottle caps and race them on by the street kind of gutters where like all the mountain water would melt and kind of go through. So that was kind of fun, And anyway, and then there was like a park there, and rusty, rundown, like metal. So in summer, it just gets super hot. If you're wearing shorts, like good luck. You just burn your skin off. And so that was the park I kind of grew up not grew up. Like I spent a few summers there and playing there. But recently, a few years ago, after kind of a lot of changes in my life, I ended up going back there with grandma and mom, and that was just surreal, an amazing experience. What was that feeling like? Like lots of nostalgic feelings going back there? Yeah, for sure. Think about when I was there growing up, what life was like, for not just myself. I guess I was pretty young, 8, but in my family, and then having gone back a few years ago with in such a different situation from not just by myself, but my family. It felt really surreal and nostalgic, and to think about, oh wow, like this kid who was doing these things over here, I'm like living in New Zealand now on the other side of the world, where when I was younger, that probably would have been a dream to just even be in New Zealand, or just be somewhere else where opportunity was present, and then to have the opportunity to do something, and I help the family. I think that was super cool.
Yeah, man. No, that's incredible, and so keen to get into that with a bit more detail. What is the situation around the focus for your parents and your family to send you over to New Zealand when you're 13? Obviously, that's a huge amount of independence for any sort of young person. Like what do you think was so integral for your family making that decision to send you over here, like hundreds of thousands of kilometers across the world? And what were your thoughts at the time as like a 13-year-old? Did you feel like excited for the opportunity, or were you like, where the hell am I going? Like, what the hell is New Zealand? Like,
yeah, that's a funny one, right? I think when I was that young, I didn't really grasp the situation and the gravity and the seriousness of it all. I found it fun. I was thinking, oh, great, I'm going to be adventure, 100%. I'm going to be overseas. I think when you're that age, like I was also thinking, oh, my family's not going to be around to tell me what to do, what not to do. Like, I'm going to have this freedom, and so that was super cool, and a complete life shift. Turkey, big city. Just the city I lived in was about 4.5 million people. Turkey itself was 75 million, something like that. So, and I was in Cambridge and Waikato, 10,000 people at the time.
Crazy.
Right?
Bunch of farmers.
And we're just biking to school. Like it was a life that I've only seen in movies, right? Where you're going, and that's the idea I had. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to school and we're going to have the lockers and, the classic American kind of lifestyle. But that's what I imagined. I came back and I remember the school was like, okay, you've got a uniform. And I was like, oh, damn, I didn't think there was going to be a uniform. Yeah. So anyway, it was a crazy experience, but I often think now, wow, if I was to move when I was 18 for uni, or now, if we were to move overseas to another country, it would be way harder than at that age. Because, I just built all my friendships here, and like everything was here. A lot of my friends were, starting to go to other cities anyway. So the friendship from middle school was going to disband anyway. Yeah. So that was my side of things. I think from family, we often talk about that with my mom. To this day, she just kind of can't understand how she did that. I think as a mother, I would just always ask herself, like, what was I thinking? Like, how did I do that? Like, I'm glad it all worked out, but how did that work? And I think a lot of it was my dad's driving. Like, he really pushed for it, which, I mean, I'm glad for. Like, I loved it. It was something I wanted as well. Yeah. But I think it was really kind of my dad's brainchild, and he came up with the idea. Mom also went on board. I think they just saw that they just want a better future for me, and for me to have certain opportunities that potentially Turkey wouldn't offer. So, I think that was the main driving idea behind it all. And then why New Zealand? I guess that's an interesting question. I think in the end it was either the US, Canada, Australia, or New Zealand. And then it was like, that was my dad and kind of me kind of go, oh, these would be cool. Yep. And my mom was the kind of final eliminator. She's like, all right, US, you're going to be 14. Dangerous. No. Like we lived in Florida when I was younger as well. So I guess that was the idea she had. Yeah. It's like, no. Yeah. And then Australia, she's like, snakes, like spiders. Crocodiles. No. Crocodiles, like something will eat you. No. Yeah. And it was like Canada, New Zealand. And I think my grandma, she's a retired diplomat, and she came to New Zealand quite a lot when she was working, like met Helen Clark and kind of all that stuff. And she loved it. She was like, New Zealand, like we don't know Canada, no one's there. We don't, like no one was in New Zealand either, but there was at least something to latch on to. My grandma going, it's a cool place. So that's kind of why New Zealand ended up being it.
Oh, well, we're glad to have you, bro. Glad you chose New Zealand over some of those other countries. Yeah. And when you're coming here all by yourself, are you like living with a like sort of boarding family that's looking after you?
Yeah, homestay family.
Yeah, wow. Like what does that do in terms of like your own identity? Do you feel like you're able to settle into who you are as an individual, or like you fitted into the Kiwi culture? Like what did that look like from an identity perspective?
Good question. I think it was easier for me than potentially some people, because it was such a young age, so I was still forming my identity. 14, 13, you're kind of still forming who you are.
Yeah.
But also, it was actually the opposite. For me, I always felt like I didn't really fit in Turkey. Even my sister, she's now in the US. She went and studied in Italy, so she didn't really stay in Turkey either, but she still feels very Turkish in her identity. But for me, I never had that. Even when I would go back to Kyrgyzstan, I just feel like that's so much more home-like than Turkey ever was for me. I don't know why. Just kind of how it ended up being. So I actually loved it. Immediately, I just made a bunch of Kiwi mates and just kind of got stuck into it. But I think there's something in that about. I think for the longest time, I just didn't really acknowledge. Well, first of all, I didn't really acknowledge like my Kyrgyz roots.
Yeah.
I'd say it, people wouldn't even know where it was.
Yeah.
And now I just kind of go, Turkey or Russia. I would say Russia, right? Because it's like Soviet Russia. It was like actually probably not. But I'd either say Russian because I speak Russian through that, or Turkey. And then I think like 3 or 4, I think 5 years ago, I realized, you know what? No, like, this is home, and like New Zealand and Kyrgyzstan, I think are both home for me. So and
awesome. Like as you've gotten older, being able to go back to those places where you grew up, and just take your Kiwi experience, and like blend all your sort of cultures together. I think it's really cool, especially for a lot of people that like myself, I've only ever lived in one country before, and it must just be so surreal, sort of coming together in that sense. And you're obviously like a serial entrepreneur now, quite like business minded, always looking at different opportunities and innovating different sectors. And I feel like through looking through some of your story, there's always been like quite an innate part of who you are. I was reading through one of your blogs, and you mentioned, I think like your first business idea was around like a video game, and people were actually spending their actual money buying like sort of digital, I don't know what it was, whatever they were, and you and your mate ended up deciding to sell stuff on that video game. Like, where did that drive around sort of business and entrepreneurial like spirit come from?
Yeah, I'd say twofold. First is it definitely didn't come innately to me. I remember having to genuinely sit down and have a think about whether it was something I wanted to do and what that meant for me. And what I mean by that is, I was super socially anxious. Wasn't really good at like something like a public speaking gig would have been the hardest thing to imagine, right? I just like speaking to people, a podcast, right? Like ordering a Subway order. I was like, just put whatever, I'm good. And I don't know. I think so. That's kind of who I was and a lot of my characteristics. But on the other hand, I remember kind of seeing my family and the financial situation that we're in, which wasn't very good. My dad having taken a lot of debt through his business escapades and bankrupting the family, losing the family home, and how that really just impacted everyone. And then basically that was happening right as I was around year 12 in New Zealand, in year 11. Later on, we found out it was actually happening for a lot longer, but really the family kind of learned all about it when I was around that age. And I remember thinking, okay, I can't really rely on my family and I'm loving the life I have here, but if I want to continue this, I'm kind of gonna have to rely on myself. And I guess throughout that time, what's more is I realized, okay, not just for me, but for my family as well, because I could finish studying, get a degree, get a good job, get a good, save up for a house and have a good life for myself here. But that doesn't fix the issue with my family, with my sister, with my grandma, with my mom. So what does that look like? And I remember thinking about it. I was like, okay, what are my options? I can work really hard, become a doctor, surgeon, how many years that will take, 20 years, 15 years. Don't have that much time. So what do I do? And then that kind of opened the door for me to figure out, okay, business, I guess, is it. You can really work hard, and maybe in a few years. And at the time, I was a bit more naive. I thought, in a few years. How long has it been now? About 10 years. It has been a while. But I remember thinking that. And that's kind of what got me into it. And I just dived straight in. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to change this about myself. I'm going to have to be better with public speaking, with people, with leadership and sales, and I have to gonna have to get some actual skills. Like, what does that actually look like? I had some great mentors who said, and taught me a lot of things there. So yeah, and I think that kind of, I got into it out of necessity almost, right? Like, well, this is, I guess, what I'm gonna have to do if these are the outcomes I want.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what got me into it, really.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, and you can see how that real life challenge of the experience that you had with your father going bankrupt, and that putting your family into debt, really being, the sort of fuel and motivation and fire for you to be as successful as you are. I mean, just circling back to that, like, that's got to be very tough to handle as a situation. Obviously, like, dealing with your father's passing, may he rest in peace, and at the same time dealing with grief, but also dealing with this huge financial burden that's been left. Like, what toll did that sort of have on you, bro, and I guess ultimately your family?
Yeah, I think at the time I didn't really acknowledge it. I did the classic thing of just ignore it.
Yep.
It hasn't really happened.
Yeah.
And so to kind of take a step back, and that was around when I was 18, year 13, finishing off high school, and that's when my father passed away, committed suicide due to everything that had happened. And what was worse is, so in Turkey, I don't know exactly the laws in New Zealand, but debt doesn't go away with the person who it belongs to, so it actually comes down to their family. So plus a lot of the company was actually on my mom's name, and that's a whole nother story. But so the debt stayed, and it was quite a lot. And my mom, just seeing what she was going through, and she was working a full-time job and then having to work another job on top, and our neighbors would be bringing in groceries for my family because they couldn't afford groceries, but obviously the neighbors could kind of see the situation, and they knew my mom would never accept anything from them, so just like put it and then ring the doorbell and run, so there was just amazing support system there for them. But kind of seeing all of that, and then my sister at the time was 13, and that took quite a toll on her as well, all of us. And for me, I think the way I dealt with that was, whether right or wrong, I kind of took it as, well, okay, I guess the responsibility is on my shoulders now. Because our family was also a small family. Like, we don't have a massive extended family. So it was just my mom, grandma, sister, really. So that made me start to think, okay, well, first of all, I don't feel it's fair that my sister might not have the same opportunities that I did. So, okay, that means she might have to just continue studying in Turkey, go to uni, work hard, and yeah, sure, she might have a good life in Turkey. But I just didn't think that was fair. So I felt that responsibility on myself, that I wanted to provide for my sister. After everything my mom did for me and everything she sacrificed, I didn't feel like that was fair, what happened to her. Out of no wrongdoing of her own, she was suddenly in a situation, right? And my grandma as well, same. She lost a lot of things when the Soviet Union collapsed, and she had all the money in the bank, and she lost everything then, and here it is, just happening all over again. So it was quite a hard time, and so I think I just took it all on myself to go, I'm gonna have to find a solution to this, and part of that was to just dig my head in the sand, I think, and ignore everything. And looking back, it wasn't the right approach. Now someone else told me what the right approach was, which is come to terms, feel the feelings, allow yourself to be sad, grieve. I don't think I would have still listened to it, because I think a lot of people did tell me that anyway. But I just kind of went into flight or fight, I think. And for me, it was just about, okay, well, I'm just going to fight. And thankfully, after things worked out financially, that I was able to kind of deal with a lot of that and go to therapy and unpack a lot of things. And this was about 2.5, 3 years ago, I think. And that was also another chapter in my life, which was great. But yeah, it was, I think, just about putting on the blinkers, the blinders, and just going at it. Really, that's how I dealt with it.
Well, man, that's really heavy and like very tragic. And like, I'm very sorry that happened to your family. That's challenging, but it's like, it goes to show, I guess, like the resilience and grit of who you are. And, even just the concept and the topic of dealing with grief. Like, I had my mate, Jackson Garden Bashop on the podcast. He unfortunately lost his mum when he was younger from a battle through with cancer. And he just said he, dealt with that situation just terribly, like hood down, started drinking a lot, wouldn't look at people in the eye and just angry. And then, unfortunately, one of my close friends and Jackson's brother, Connor Garden Bishop, he tragically passed away. And, I was talking to Jackson about grief, and he was saying like what he's learned from going through that situation with his mum to how he's handling the loss of his bro, Connor, is just the realization that like however you're feeling is okay. Like it's okay to fucking, feel like shit.
Absolutely.
And that's fine. Like just like ride those emotions. And I'm sure that's stuff which you've sort of learnt as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is such a unique and intense story, bro. And I think to compound that situation even more with what was happening, was it shortly after that, around sort of 2017, or was it before, when Immigration New Zealand, actually said that you have to leave New Zealand and return to Turkey immediately because you didn't have the right visa and you didn't have, a full qualification, and they didn't deem your skills as sort of relevant to the workforce at the time. I was watching that sort of 7 Sharp video, and they feature your employer at the time, and they were just saying like, mate, Omer, like we need this guy. He's contributing to society. He's he's entrepreneurial. Man could be the next Elon Musk. And
glad I'm not.
Yeah, we use different reference.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when in the timeline did that happen around the whole like visa and having to leave New Zealand? If you can speak on that.
Yeah, for sure. So to paint the timeline, this is happening. So end of year 13, just as I'm kind of entering my exams and going to uni, that's when things happened with my dad. And then, we had saved some money. And throughout high school, I was also kind of getting into some entrepreneurial things. I worked at a startup called Neread, which was co-founded by a guy called Alex St. John, who moved to Cambridge out of Silicon Valley. He was the creator of DirectX for Microsoft that like powers 3D graphics. And moved in and was starting with some graphic processor-based tech company. I'm butchering it. But super high tech. I think after a while, they ended up raising a lot of money. They went for quite some time. Anyway, and so I was dabbling in there, and he was one of my first mentors. Really, who told me, look, if you want to start businesses, you want to kind of get into startup space, like get a tangible skill. Like it's way easier to be the technical founder and then find a non-technical founder than being the non-technical founder and finding a technical founder. So okay. Probably a bit biased advice because they were all super, software engineer, kind of computer science
coders.
types. Yeah. And I was like, oh, no, I don't love that. But okay, let's just study engineering. So that kind of got me into engineering, and did a year of that at Waikato Uni. I had saved some money. Also international student fees, right? Quite expensive. I think at the time it was like 30,000 a year.
Wow.
You can't get student loans either.
Right? So you got to pay that direct.
I think you could split it into like 2 payments over like the 2 semesters or something. But yeah, so not cheap. And I had saved some money through that, and like you said, through that business that me and my friends started, where you could just sell like virtual items for real money, and like that was cool. We made like a few thousand, but at the time that's super cool, right? You're starting something, you made a few $1,000s. That's massive. Yeah. So, and then obviously from family, so there was some money there. Went 1 year, but then we kind of didn't really know what the next steps were. Like my mom, myself, we were all thinking, well, let's kind of see where this goes. I mean, we got enough money for 1 year, but we're going to have to figure out what it is. And maybe does that mean you then transfer into second year back in Turkey? Or maybe it's easier than trying to get university entrance again in Turkey. So anyway, we spent the last kind of money there. And then throughout that year, I realized I was really mulling and thinking about what the next steps were and what I wanted to do. And I knew I loved New Zealand. I wanted to stay here. And I could see the opportunities I could have here from just already my, at the time, not so short, but short time. I thought it was 6-7 years I was in New Zealand at the time. And so I kind of realized that I can, so you can work 20 hours part-time while studying on a student visa. So I said, okay, well, kind of let's try and find a job instead of a kind of retail job or somewhere, which I did work a retail job for a while as well to earn. But I tried finding just like a cool like startup job or something. And then, I found those guys up in Auckland. And that that was amazing. Like that opportunity, the job application, we were looking for a marketing manager. It was a startup. Alex, Vaz, and Nick, they gave me my first shot at things, right? Like I had some experience of dabbling and trying, but they gave me my first shot, and they wanted me to come up. It was in Auckland, and I was in Hamilton, so like I'd finish studying, finish my job. I'd work at the base at the mall at a clothing store. And finish that and then drive up to Auckland and then stay for a few days, work, come down, back. And it was this crazy period of my life. Hectic time. But basically, they went, we want you here. Like, let's kind of figure out what that looks like. So we applied for a work visa. Funniest story there is we realized it wasn't going to be easy to get the visa. So I was going to need an immigration consultant advisor. They weren't cheap. And then while I was working my retail job, one of the guys who was serving, him and his wife, he had this like a Slavic accent. So I asked him where they were from, and can't remember where they were from now. Oh God! But I was like, oh, like I speak Russian, and talk about my family and all that. And then so he told me, oh well, what are you doing in New Zealand? Are you from here? I was like, no, well I'm working, studying. And he's like, oh, here's my card. I'm an immigration advisor.
Oh,
so
nice.
if you'd like to, and if you ever need help, let me know. And I think of 3 or 4 months later, I was like, I'm going to need your help. and
How expensive are they? Because it's an interesting role. So do they like advocate on your behalf?
Yeah, they kind of tell you everything you might need, like what you need to put together for documents and insurance or X-rays and medical and I think often you can do things like that yourself, but especially if you've got a bit of a wonky case like mine, they really can help.
Yeah.
Bojan Jankovic.
Shout out.
Yeah, no, amazing. And again, like he batted for me so much, and I'm forever grateful for him. And I think that's a common theme early in my life. I mean, to this day as well. But so many people just went above and beyond to help me, and that's something I just carry with me so much, and I try and give back in any way I can, to this day. Yeah. But anyway. That started happening. They wanted me to join the company full time. We applied for a visa. Visa didn't come back. Immigration was saying that I didn't have the marketing qualifications because I didn't even have a degree, and I did 1 year of engineering. So how's this relevant? The employer, and they truly wanted me. Yeah. So they kept batting. They said, look, we put a job application, which they had. They tried hiring other people, which they had. Yeah. And anyway, so we went back and forth for a few months. And then eventually, like, immigration basically said, no, there's no way this is happening. Because you can, like, dispute the decision a few times. Yeah. And then after a few disputes, it eventually comes down to, okay, you've got 14 days to leave. Otherwise, we'll deport you. And it came to that.
Wow.
So and then I did everything I could, and I think that was the common theme, and something I really wanted to do was, if I'm going out in flames. I'm going to do everything I can, because going to Turkey, to a country I hadn't grown up or didn't really know anymore, was one thing, but going there and then feeling like, what if I did this? Maybe could I have stayed? Would have been a way worse feeling. So I did everything I could, like Festival for the Future. There I think there were some politicians talking or raising my hand, saying like, "This is my." And immigration was a big topic, I think, during those elections. So talking about my case and saying, "Well, I feel like I'm contributing. Just because I don't fit a mold, I can't stay." And that didn't really go anywhere. And then 7 Sharp trying to get on TV.
Shout out Jahan, who pitched that story you were telling me before we started recording.
Absolutely, yeah. Him and I recently spoke, and again, he's one of those people that just went above and beyond and just wanted to help someone. And tangible results of how small things maybe that you might do, maybe for Jahan, for Bojan, for Alex, Nick, these and so many other people. It might have just been like I think they did a good deed, but it changed my life, right?
And within the context of that, because in Turkey there's like mandatory military service, so you're facing potentially having to go back to a country you didn't feel too familiar with and do mandatory military service in this period of your life where you were just oozing like entrepreneurial like passion. Yeah. Did it feel like a bit of a slap in the face from old New Zealand? Like, how did you perceive that?
Yeah, I tried coming to terms with it, and that's what I mean is, I think things will happen in life that are just out of your control, but if you've done everything you can, then you can just rest easy. And I think that was really my goal is, well, if I don't get a visa, I don't get a visa, but have I tried everything? And by everything, I don't mean going through the regular channels. It's going through the irregular channels and trying everything you can. And this is not just in a visa context, right? It's in any other context. If I'm trying to achieve X, Y, Z, am I putting my best foot forward? And if not, then if it doesn't happen, well, I'll have myself to blame, right? So that was kind of how I looked at it. I did kind of feel like it was slapping a... I don't know. I don't think it really felt like that because, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think New Zealand owed me anything, right? Like, sure, I felt like I studied here and I, paid international student fees and all this, but so many other people do. And there's still so many other people who do have to leave anyway. And so, I don't know. I didn't really kind of feel like the world was against me. It's because that's what was supposed to happen. So I wasn't too kind of angry at New Zealand for that.
It's it just goes to show, I think, again, like that theme of like resilience and grit and almost like extreme accountability that you seem to put on yourself, which I think is really incredible. So you end up getting, I guess, technically not deported, but told to leave, voluntarily leaving because of your visa condition. How long did you then stay in Turkey when you left New Zealand? And then I'm keen to also just touch on the relationship with old Winston Peters, because he basically intervened with what they call like a ministerial intervention, where he sort of got you back into New Zealand and probably sorted out some of your visa issues. So yeah, keen to unpack that a little bit. But firstly, how long did you stay in Turkey after you left NZ?
Yeah, 4 months, I think, 4 to 5 months, anywhere between 4 to 6 months. I honestly can't remember. It was a blur being back there. So I went back, and then so going back to the army situation, over the age of 18, if you're a male, you have to serve in the military. I think if you've graduated, well, at the time at least, if you've graduated, you do 6 months. If you haven't graduated from uni, if you didn't go to uni, then you do a year. And then you can defer it until after you finish your uni, if you want. So when I went back, I immediately kind of got put into the system of, the military transcription, and they were like, what are you doing? Are you going to go to uni? If not, you're going to come serve. So I think we were going through that system. I was applying to some unis, kind of waiting to hear back through that cutoff period. And at the time, I was also trying to start another startup, going, okay, well, if I'm Turkey, I was like, well, if I'm Turkey, I'm not going to let that stop me. Sure, I feel like New Zealand has more opportunities, but hell, let's give it a go. Nice. I was looking at the pros. It's like, oh, Turkey's a bigger economy. It's closer to Europe. Maybe there's something here. Maybe this is what it's supposed to be, right? Anyway, so I was dabbling, doing my thing. But before I left New Zealand, so I caught up with my homestay family, Todd, Lisa, and kind of stayed with them, I think, for a year, just a year and a half before I left, so towards the end of high school. Anyway, so we're having a dinner before I left, maybe the last few nights. The granddad was there, Lance, as well, and they were just talking about how unfair it was and how, this just wasn't right. And, obviously I was like, I kind of agree, but it is what it is. So, and I remember one thing Lance said at the end. He was like, you know what, I'm gonna try and talk to a friend of mine and see what we can do. I didn't want to raise my hopes. A lot of people had said that. And I had tried everything by then, right? This is like the last 2 nights before I was flying away. So everything. TV, that went nowhere other than a few racist Facebook post comments, my mom getting mad. And I was like, look, it is what it is. Anyway, so that and trying to reach politicians myself and everything. It didn't go anywhere. Went back to Turkey. That was it. And then my grandma also talked to a friend of hers as well, who like there were just so many people around, right? So I wasn't really too sure who was doing what, like what was happening. All I knew, just one day, Lance forwarded me some emails, I think, around with Winston. So the friend he was talking about was Winston Peters. Right. I think they went to the high school or uni together. Like they played rugby together, right? He was saying we were playing rugby together. Classic, very New Zealand. Yeah. And at the time, so it was just the elections had happened. He just became deputy prime minister, and I don't know, and I think you would imagine that Winston Peters was probably the last person who might help in an immigration scenario, 100%. Right? But I think. And look, I don't have any political affiliations, but one of the things that he always says, from his own words, was, "Look, like I really want to help people who, like I don't have anything against immigration. I just really want to help people who who won in New Zealand. And now I don't know what he means by that, but I think what was great to see was Winston had looked at my case, I looked at everything I'd gone through and everything, and said, yeah, I mean, this is and there was a letter that I think he addressed to Stephen Woodhouse, I think it was the immigration minister at the time, batting for me, like a whole letter talking about me, my background, and it was clear it wasn't just a fluff case. You know, he was talking about some exact things I had done, and at the time, there's no chat GPT or nothing, right? So he genuinely must have looked at this and then gone, these are my thoughts. And he was asking for intervention from the immigration minister. And then, and I think that coupled with, the deputy immigration minister at the time, or associate immigration minister, Chris Farfoy.
Yep.
I think it's from
he lives just 5 minutes away from there.
So he had also, because I don't think it went anywhere with Stephen. I think there was a bit of a, anyway, I don't know what exact story, but and Chris kind of jumped in and said, look, agreed, this is a young man that we want in New Zealand, and here's a ministerial intervention, here's a work visa, 12-month open work visa, and then come back, get a job, and then kind of go from there. And then from there, it's kind of you're on your own, because you're going to have to keep finding jobs and applying for work visas. And then you're on the path, I guess, for residency if you do stuff. Yeah. I mean, long story short, I think I like to think that hopefully I've kind of made them proud as well. With Atlas Studios now, we've got 7 full-timers. So giving jobs to New Zealanders, hopefully it worked out. And, I like to think that I didn't waste the opportunity that they gave me and what they saw in me. So and hopefully I can do more.
Absolutely not, man. And I've got a little an excerpt from, I think, what Winston Peters said. If there was ever a person who deserves special consideration of his immigration work visa application, it would be for this extraordinary young man. So you obviously had a soft spot, especially with him. And I think it goes to show what can happen through exhausting all those options. Like you went to the media, you did all of the right things and really articulated your story well, and it came across the right person through 2 degrees of separation. It's actually pretty remarkable when you think how that panned out. I think you should definitely write Winnie a letter and be like, hey man, just want to say thanks, and this is where we're at now and this is what we're doing.
I do want to. I remember seeing him at the New Zealand Business Hall of Fame Awards, I think last year. He was there, and then I introduced myself again and said, hey, do you remember me? And shook hands, and he said, yeah, I do remember you, and kind of briefly spoke about it.
That's cool.
So but absolutely,
probably had a cigarette in his hand.
I don't think you could smoke inside there, but it was funny. It was great. It felt good.
That's amazing, man. I'm so glad that was all arranged. And I guess there's just so much to talk about. We just spent this half of this podcast, I guess, sort of talking about your own personal story, which I think is so interesting. Moving a bit more to, I guess, around sort of risk taking and the more success side of things. I saw that you quit your job in 2021 to sort of go all in around cryptocurrency. What was your mindset in that moment, and what was the opportunity that you saw? And please, when you're speaking about crypto, because there'll be a lot of people that are listening, they're like, what the hell is Bitcoin, what the hell is cryptocurrency?
Sure.
Try and articulate it in a way that I don't know, 15-year-old that has no idea about crypto would understand.
Times are changing. I feel like 15-year-olds know more about crypto than
that's very
us
fair.
Probably nowadays.
I should probably reframe that to a 25-year-old that's watching, or a 30-year-old.
Exactly. So, passed that visa stuff and got a good job. So I had a great job at a company called Overdose Digital, e-commerce agency. Great New Zealand success story, by the way. I mean, I think they've got 400 staff globally now.
Wow.
They're like a Kiwi. I think they're one of the leading e-commerce agents in the world, right?
Wow.
And out of New Zealand. So great company, great people. And I was there, great career. I loved what I did. I found this perfect intersection of kind of tech, engineering, innovation, and kind of the business and commerce, which was e-commerce, right? There's so many tech principles and things, but it was so commerce driven, and it was beautiful. I just felt like I found exactly what I loved and my calling. And again, due to the opportunities they gave, I was, I think 21 when they hired me as a client manager, being client managing some of the most iconic brands in New Zealand. And they kind of trusted me to do that. I remember internally, I think they had some questions of, do we hire him, do we not? And then after a while, they told me, look, weren't too sure, but glad we did. Anyway, so I was there, had a good job, good trajectory. But I was kind of dabbling in crypto. I think I was dabbling way back during Nuriat in high school, like early.
Right.
Me and my friends were in the school computers, like mining Dogecoin. And
Wow. What was the price of Bitcoin back then?
I can't remember. It was a couple of $100, probably, 100%. It was too hard to buy it, so we never figured it out. But even Dogecoin, like, I think you could just open a link and it would just give it to you for free. It was just worth nothing. And I remember, like, me and my friend, we spoke about it recently. We're like, I think, like, we did some rough maths based on, like, if we could find that school computer that we did that's probably hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, just like that we probably did that.
You've got to find it.
It's, we tried. It's gone. Yeah, it's probably in a dump somewhere. And so I was kind of interested in it. And then, so while I was working there, like, this is the NFT boom, right? This is just like before it really became a thing. I remember reading an article somewhere. There was this guy who created some NFTs, like an art piece. So this is before it really went on mainstream. And I read that. I was kind of interested. I bought a few for a couple $100, which was even that was a bit wild. Nothing went anywhere. I kind of forgot about it. 6 months later, me and my friend who we bought it with kind of looked back on those, and a couple $100 we spent ended up being like, I don't know, $10,000 or something. Like, this is wild.
On NFTs?
Yeah, on like these two that we bought. One went to zero, that one went to nowhere, but the other one did. And that's just a luck. That's just pure dumb luck, right? Like, pure dumb luck. And that kind of piqued my interest. Go, okay, well, because I was investing, I was saving, you know. I think I had a shares. I don't know if shares was around. I think shares was around. I think I had sharesies. And, you know, all that stuff. And, you know, you're pretty happy with, you know, 10, 15, 20, 25% a year. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, totally.
And suddenly this in 6 months goes from a couple of hundred to 10,000. There's something in this, right or wrong. So started looking more into it. Where NFTs, again, you know, just like pictures that people are buying online for crazy, stupid amounts of money. Speculating or not investing, nothing. And kind of go into a few kind of online communities. People are talking, and I'd go into a client meeting. I'd come out of it, and same guys are saying, "Oh, we bought this, sold this, you know, made a couple of grand." I'm like, "That's my monthly salary. Like, what are we doing here?" And you know, I thought, you know what, let's give this a go. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I got no kids, I got no mortgage, got no big responsibilities. I'm no stranger to being uncomfortable. Like, I was in a very comfortable position in my life where, you know, I was earning a good salary. And I mean, I was riding a high because I was in New Zealand, I had a visa, you know, life was good. Life was good. Whereas, you know, just a few years before, I was, you know, couch surfing with my friends, like they'd allow me to stay on their couch, and complete life change. So I was like, you know what, like, hell, if I have to use some of my savings, eat some noodles again, so be it. But like, again, it would suck to know that I didn't try rather than try and this doesn't work out. So I quit. I remember telling the company, I was like, look, I'm leaving to kind of buy and sell some monkey pictures online. And, you know, they kind of laughed and like, okay, but like, and I asked them, I was like, is there a job for me if I do want to come back? And they said, yeah, sure, there will be. So yeah, I left, I quit, did that for a few years. Not for a few years, sorry, for about a year. And it was a crazy period of life. We could talk a bit more about it, but it was just crazy. Staying up, buying, selling, doing all these things, stupid, silly things, really. And did well, worked out well financially, and kind of afterwards realized, well, this is not really a career. I can't really do this until I retire. So kind of stopped it and kind of got back into e-commerce with what I do now.
Wow. Can you speak on, like, during that period when you went all in, like, how much did you invest in, like, how, you don't have to say the exact number, but can you give us a range of, like, how much money you sort of walked away with, I should say? Yeah.
I mean, started probably, it all started with those couple of $100 that I spent buying those initial NFTs. Now, it was pure dumb luck because they could have both gone to zero. I would have never touched them, never looked at them again, and probably would have forgotten about it until it went into the mainstream media. And then could go on, oh, damn, like, oh, well. But somehow it worked out. So then after that, I just kind of sold it, would use the proceeds to buy more, kind of just started doing that thing. And I mean, at the end of it, I think walked away with, like, decent amount of money. I think like just over 7 figures. So that was pretty mean.
Were you like pinching yourself as that's happening?
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
Like, what is that like, going from a very, like, volatile investment, but then walking away with, like, you know, 7 figures through, like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was. I remember when the first time, like I'm telling my family about what I'm doing, and they're kind of, I don't know how what they felt, what they thought, but and you got to remember, my mom, grandma, they come from a very kind of Soviet Russian household where you got to kind of, if you want to stereotype it, kind of like the Asian stereotype, where it's you got to study, be an engineer, doctor, lawyer, all that, and they just couldn't understand it. Not alone did I drop out, and then right now I just found a good job and now I'm quitting that. So they were pretty wild about it, bewildered, but. I remember when one of them was worth $100,000. Like, I'd never seen money like that in my life, right? And like, thankfully, we grew up, middle class, I would say, but it was a facade middle class. As a kid, I didn't really understand that. As a kid, I was, upper middle class. Honestly, I would say that I went to a private school in Turkey, but looking back at it, it was all with money that wasn't really ours. That my dad would just, get debt and then get more credit cards and do this and do that. It was so as a kid you don't really understand it, but as you kind of grow up you go, like everything was a facade. So when everything kind of went, you go, this is actually what our situation really was. So even so when one of them was worth about $100,000, I'd never seen money like that. I remember talking to my mom and she was like, look, sure, you believe it's going to keep going up. And I was fully in the Kool-Aid, right? I drank the Kool-Aid. I was saying this was going to be the best future. I was the insufferable guy. I was definitely the insufferable crypto guy. And I think you kind of have to be. Otherwise, because I had a few other friends who, they started going up like 30, 40, 50,000. And they're like, I'm selling this. I'm never looking back. I'm buying myself a new car. Like, I'm going to put it towards a house deposit. And I remember thinking, well, I can work a lot, save a lot, and 10 years probably save, $100K or whatever that was that I thought I could do. But maybe there's a chance for this to go even higher. So kind of let's give it a go. So it was a bit delusional in that sense, but you kind of have to be. And I think that's the kind of catch-22 risk, right? Is you have to be delusional enough to kind of quote unquote hold it to a certain amount. But then if you're delusional enough to do that, at one point do you cut the delusion to actually cash in, which is why a lot of people would either sell out early, and then they go, oh damn, I wish I held it, or they would hold it. And I knew so many people who would hold it all the way there and then go all the way back down. So again, it was, I guess, luck there where I was talking to my mom and she was like, look, would you be pretty upset if that went to zero? And I remember thinking, yeah. I had some other ones as well. So I was like, I'll sell this one. So that was my first big sell. And after that, again, I would just kind of hold and sell and do all that silly stuff. And
wow.
But it was pretty surreal. I remember when I finally cashed out most of what I had because I believed it was all going to go down. And I was kind of right, actually. It was like 4 or 5 months before everything went to shit. But I remember going for a walk around the block and just complete silence. I was just walking and I just
your life's changed.
My life changed. It was just wild. It was a very weird feeling.
Especially as someone in the early 20s. You know what I mean? I feel like they can either go one or two ways for, you give someone in the early 20s a lot of money. A lot of people are probably choosing the path of destruction unintentionally. What was your just in regards to that, what was your first big purchase? Did your mindset sort of change now that you had, you're financially a lot more comfortable? Did you buy some watches? Were you into that sort of hustle culture? What was?
Yeah, absolutely. I said, I was that insufferable crypto guy. Yes. I bought some watches. Bought a Tesla, which was my dream car ever since. Cool, it was one of my first. Year 9, year 10, right? I'm reading all these books. One of the books I had read was, Elon Musk's biography, and crazy to think about kind of where we've come. But at the time, I idolized people like him, right? And the whole hustle culture that's kind of what drove me. And I think there's a big negative thing around that now that I believe. But at the time, that was my thought. So it was always my dream car. Other people have dream cars for Ferraris, Lambos. For me, it was just a Tesla. So I got that because I realized, well, why spend money for the sake of spending money? My dream car is this. If I buy something else, I actually don't really want it. So anyway, bought it a Model 3, just base one, just out of Tesla, and that was cool. And I think experiences were important, and I realized everything that people had done for me. So my best friends, we flew to Dubai, flew there, stayed at
Are you shouting?
yeah,
Awesome.
like the Burj Al Arab, like that 7-star hotel they have here. So we just
Far out.
stayed there.
Unbelievable.
Like the three of us. It was literally like Dumb and Dumber, right? Like we're just pulling up. There's these billionaire people, and it's just us three just walking around. It's pretty funny. Stayed there for a few days, and then with another friend, we went to Singapore.
Cool, man.
So did some travel. That's when I went to Kyrgyzstan. Like donated some money to charity, and kind of I don't know, just did things that I think made me feel good. But yeah, and I definitely did lose, I think, my mind a bit thinking about just the splurge purchases and everything. But do I regret it? Probably not, because it's kind of helped me reel it in now. Whereas I feel like if I hadn't, would I be thinking now, oh damn, I was too sensible with my money and I never really got to enjoy it. So I don't know. I think all things considered, I was pretty sensible with it. I ended up buying a house. So yeah, I think all things considered, like you said, I was so young, and you don't come from money. You've never seen money like this. And if you think about a stereotypical person who made a lot of money in crypto, they do end up just kind of losing their mind a bit. And I have a lot of friends and examples who have done that. So I think it all kind of worked out, all things considered.
It sounds like the decisions you made financially is like the most ideal decisions. Like if I ever thought, if I came into 7 figures worth of like crypto cash, I'd love to take the boys for a holiday around the world. I'd love to retire my parents and like buy a house and just get the dream car, but still live quite modest. So I feel like you've done a good job. Obviously got your kids switched on just your shoulders. You didn't turn all Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belford. So that's good.
And like I said, again, like that's where for my sister, like I paid for her to go through uni in Italy. So wanted her to have that opportunity, and again, my mom, she was still working, so kind of retired her.
How did you have that conversation with your mum? Like, take us back to that. Like, what does that look like, actually retiring one of your parents?
Yeah, well, so she had just, can't remember, I think she had just married my stepdad, or they were together, a long-term relationship for a while. And, she was just constantly talking about how, she wasn't talking about it, but having seen what she had gone through with work and working so many hours and just, she had a lot of health problems just through the stress-induced health problems. Sure. And I remember just asking him, saying, look, by the way, this is what's happened, got a bit of money. So I didn't hide it from them. They knew. And I said, do you enjoy working? Because, some people enjoy. Like, I love what I do. I love working. But she kind of said, no, it's insufferable. She spent, I can't remember, like 30 years, I think, the same at the United Nations. And kind of said she was done. And I said, okay, well, how much money would that look like for you to kind of not work? Because obviously my stepdad's still working, he earns all right. So, but, my mom's pride, she would never just kind of live off him. So I was like, look, a big purchase, the home and stuff, sure. But like how much kind of would you need? And anyway, so we kind of discussed the figure, and then she was kind of asking why, and I was like, oh, just curious. Like, just kind of trying to learn. Because again, like her bride, she wouldn't actually tell him, but I was talking with her about like a thought exercise. Anyway, so she said that, and I remember transferring that and saying, look, like, just quit. And so she ended up doing that. And it feels good.
That's incredible, bro. That's like, I feel like most sons on earth dream is to do something like that. I can't, like the amount of sort of pride, but also staunchness as an Eastern European, as your mum, like I'm sure she just would have been so grateful for that, and it must be an incredible feeling for you too.
Incredible. Like
that's better than any watch or Tesla, right?
100%. And when I look back about the best parts of that windfall, it was my family and how they felt, and the things I was able to do for them, and my trips with my friends. It wasn't even the car. Like the car's kind of getting older now, and the watches kind of fade away. But it's really the experiences and things you can do for people.
That's amazing, bro. Keen to move over to like Atlas Studios and the work that you're up to at the moment, bro. So describe sort of setting up Atlas Studios. What is it that you guys do? How has that journey been, sort of scaling a company that has now 7 full-time FTEs in the e-commerce space?
So to take a step back, I think right at the start you talked about kind of being in the fun space and all of that. That's kind of how it started. So after the windfall, I probably took about a year break. That's when the travel was happening and everything. And I realized, well, if I don't have an income, like, it's not going to last forever.
Yeah.
So I was looking at kind of what to do. Initially, I just set aside some money and started buying e-commerce businesses that I thought had potential that I could grow. Obviously, understood e-commerce quite well. Did that. Invested in a few e-commerce brands, and then invested in one with like a few friends. So then that I was trying to kind of take that into more of like a venture fund angle where it was not just my money, but a few people can pull money and we'll just like buy up these brands and kind of grow them and sell them. And so that's what kind of the company started off as Atlas Ventures, and then that was what it was called initially. I realized that for that to actually be successful, I either had to kind of buy, grow, sell quite rapidly, and or just kind of take profits out of the businesses to pay the mortgage. Or I mean, the only other way you're making money is when eventually you sell that company, which can take a few years. So I kind of had to swallow my pride because it was also an ego thing. I think looking back now, I'm like, oh, cool. I mean, I made a bunch of money in crypto. Like, what's the natural next step? Being a private equity guy, like managing money. That's a cool thing. But I kind of had to swallow my pride a bit and go, this is not going to work out. Like, this isn't really the path. So kind of while I was dabbling and kind of thinking, well, what am I going to do here? I remember just finding a few brands who were asking, who actually misunderstood what we did. And they were like, could you guys run like email marketing through Klaviyo? And can you help us with some of our Shopify stuff? By the way, there is no equity on the table. Like, we can't give equity, but we'll like pay. And I was like, I mean, sure. That sounds good. So I started doing that for a few brands. And then from there, it's kind of word spread, word of mouth, a few other brands. And then suddenly I found myself in a situation where me and another part-timer, we were spending most of the time on that, and that was like 99.9% of the revenue. So
true. So more like service,
and I realized, okay, I should stop. Like, it was also like just selling and explaining what the business was very hard. Like, that's when I decided I would open up studios. So then we became Atlas Ventures and Studios. But then there were issues with that because explaining again what we did, and we invest in your brand, but also we will work with you, or we will also do this. It was kind of quite complicated. And I'll talk to great founders like Ollie, and then I'll shout at Ollie, and it was great. It was so cool. And I'll go, I do want to do this, but then what's the opportunity for me? Like, how does this work out for me? Because they're not going to sell in a year or two, so I'm going to have to like put more money in, wait for a few years. So where's the cash flow coming in? And that's what I really struggled with. And I was realizing opportunities were slipping my fingers. Like, I would come across these cool founders, great people, but then I actually couldn't pull the trigger on it either. So that's when I realized, okay, ventures got to go. It doesn't work out. So I sold off like the few brands I had. A few of them actually I did sell for more. So that kind of worked out. But, and then studios became, so we became Atlas Studios. Atlas Ventures and Studios is still the registered name, but Atlas Studios is kind of what we are, and we've been for about a year and a half. And I think the reason I was a bit on the fence about calling it or doing an agency was, I mean, I don't know if you're kind of across it, but the agency landscape is I think, a cesspool just globally, not just New Zealand. There's such a low barrier to entry business that anyone who just watches a YouTube video about making money online will go and start an agency. So it kind of gets a bad rep just in general. But then I had a great experience from the people at Overdose. They were an agency, but people loved them, and the work we did was amazing. And as a client manager, I wasn't putting out fires all the time. I was all constantly talking about relationship. Like, I was building relationships with my clients, and we would talk about the drum and bass mix that one of us would put together. And like, it was just like, it was great. It was people. It was talking. It was building solid relationships, not putting out fires. It was doing good work and then just having fun with it. So I realized, okay, I think agency gets a bad rep because so many people do it and so many people do it wrong. So how do I take what I learned at Overdose, and how do I do, hopefully, kind of bring in the best parts of it. So that's really when I leaned into it and went, okay, I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to embrace being an agency and just do it well, hopefully. So for the past year and a half, that's what we've been doing. Grew to about 7 staff, 7th person starting on the 1st of April, our UX lead, and super excited for her to join. Shout out Amber. And Yeah, and we've purely grown based on word of mouth and referrals, and they've done no sales. Again, I think a bit biased because I come from the client management background, so I just focus on we don't have to do sales if we can just keep our existing clients and if they're happy. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at now.
That's incredible, dude. Yeah, it's cool to hear the background, almost having to swallow your own pride around wanting to have, a bit more like a tangible focus on like equity and like investing, but then actually turning into like a service business because that's where the sort of demand is. Where do you see like the sort of ceiling for Atlas Studios, bro? Like / Atlas Ventures? Like in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, have you got some pretty ambitious like growth plans? What does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're riding an amazing wave. We've from day one, I've realized I didn't want to be full service. So we're just on Shopify Plus, the ecosystem around it, and then retention marketing. So, Klaviyo, SMS, email, subscriptions, bundling, all that stuff. And that's our bread and butter, and that's all we do. And I think we do it very well. And I think there's a real gap in the market in Australia and New Zealand, especially, but globally, for those kind of high growth mid-market brands at that 2 to 25 million annual revenue. You've kind of grown to that stage yourself, founder-led, which is the right approach, by the way. Like you shouldn't really work with an agency. I think if you're any smaller, most of the time you'll get taken for a ride. And kind of they're approaching that stage. They have certain systems. They've found product market fit. They're in retail stores. They've got all this, and they need either people to kind of take over certain areas or to do certain areas better or to support their existing teams they're building with more, because they can hire juniors internally, but they kind of, because they can't afford like just a senior team across designers, developers, strategists, and then kind of bringing an external partner to also help their internal teams. And I think there's a real gap in the market for that. And Shopify is growing. More and more big brands are moving into Shopify Plus from more cumbersome, difficult platforms. So anyway, I think we're riding out pretty well. The pretty ambitious goals. I mean, we're trying to triple the business this year from last year. We're on track for it, which is great. I mean, we hired 2 full-timers this month, February. So both of them started this month. The fourth, Amber starting in April. Probably will be hiring again. We're already hiring one part-timer now, but probably another one. And that's for this year. And then from day dot, I had a plan of just taking Atlas Studios for the next 5 years. So now it's about 4 years left. Bring it to a certain scale and then get acquired. Cool. I've never kind of had ambitions to make it a global 100, 200 person agency. I think there's a sweet spot between kind of right where you're about 20 staff, and that's kind of where I'm aiming for 2025, boutique-ish, so you're not really a 2-man band anymore, to a 2-person band, but you're not also at a scale where there are inefficiencies because you've got 100 staff and you've got to just charge for that, and the client might not actually be getting the right value for it. So hopefully that's the plan, that's the goal. I think we're going well towards it, but I mean every other day I'm kind of doubting myself and I'm thinking, is this the right thing to do? Is this working out? And that's where my fiance Chrisana there, she's been amazing. Shout out. She's a massive shout out.
Got a bit of an audience there.
Yeah. She's been amazing. I mean, board advisor, and we always joke that I should probably be paying her, but as a board advisor fees. But
that's good. That's incredible, bro. It's amazing to see just how your career and journey has been sort of like navigated across like many different opportunities and challenges. And it must also just be so many lessons in leadership, scaling a company at the same time with everything else that's going on. I could talk to you literally for like hours and hours, but I'm also really conscious you do have a lunch coming up. There's a few more things I just want to sort of touch on before we move to some quick fire questions. The other one was around, I guess, like the darker side of ambition. And I mean, like people sort of see the success. They might see the glossy, sort of perspective on Instagram. But like, what's the cost, do you think, of success for a lot of like modern entrepreneurs?
I think we should reframe the success part, because like what does success actually look like? And I think categorizing it, like career and financial success versus family success versus health, success. So I think there's different types of success, but let's assume we're talking about the career financial side, right? The ambition. I mean, for me, the dark side of it was that that it consumed me, right? It just became all I thought about, especially during the kind of before the financial reward. Thinking, okay, well, I have to make something, I have to do something, I have to help my family, I have to help myself. And so it consumed me. And I recall after everything worked out, I was at the lowest point of my life. And it's, woe me, champagne problems. But I think this is something common that people kind of go through. And again, if I heard this when I was couch surfing and someone said, Omer, like, you'll make 7 figures and you'll be at the lowest point of your life, I'd tell him to fuck off, I was like, oh, give it to me, then I'll tell you. So I do appreciate that sentiment. But if you're ever privileged and lucky and in a position to experience that, you end up realizing that it's not all there is to it. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like you've got shelter and kind of food and all that. But once you kind of take care of those things, other things start to come into play. And so if you don't have shelter, obviously more money will help your problems and it will be good, and same with food, etc. But as you kind of go up there and those needs are taken care of, if you're not spending time with family, if you're not looking after yourself mentally, physically, like those things really start to take a toll on you. And I realized that's what was happening to me. I wasn't eating. I think I went down like 55, 58, 60 kgs, like 6 foot, 20 years old, and was super skinny. My relationship at the time ended, probably mostly due to me not paying kind of the right attention to it, the effort. I was barely hanging out, would talk to my friends, my best friends, my family. And I realized like it was a very low point of my life. So I went to therapy, kind of started unpacking a lot of things. And one of the great things we discussed was like this pie chart. And she said, like, okay, you tell me you're pretty upset because of XYZ reasons. Can you draw here, please, like what you currently feel like you're paying attention to? Because obviously a pie chart is limited. It's not unlimited, right? She goes, can you kind of categorize it based on, I think it was like work, health, work, family relationships, romantic relationships, friend relationships, self-care, hobbies or something. Anyway, so it was kind of this chart. I think a bit about it, and I think I went away, and next week I come back and I do it. I was like 75% of it was work. No, and everything else was like 5-10%, if that. And it was very clear. And it kind of seems like you should already know this, but just putting it up there.
Yeah, it'd be a great exercise to do.
Yeah, you kind of realize, I mean, I shouldn't complain. If I'm putting 75% of my effort into this, well, I'm just not putting in the effort there. So that really helped me paint a picture to kind of go, okay, this helped me get to where I am and it served me well, but it's got to change because now I can't be doing this. And anyway, that kind of helped me reposition my priorities and what was important to me. So I think, the dark part of it is that I think you end up getting all consumed by it, and you can get all consumed by it. And is there a case about you having to do it? I don't know. No, I think I still struggle with that. If someone told me, Omer, take a balanced approach, look after yourself and all of that, would I have listened to them at the time? And would I have done it? And if I did, would I be where I am today? I don't know. That's the kind of flip side.
That's the catch-22. I think that's a really awesome example you just shared with the pie chart, just making me thinking, even in my life, like where is my time and energy being spent, and where is it, where am I not putting other areas of my attention into my life, which is also, probably more important than work in some cases. I think as well with this like whole Instagram, like hustle culture and hustle mentality. I had Peter Barres on the podcast really early on when I first started. And he had a really good point. And he was like, when you look at all of this narrative from like, Andrew Tate, you've got the Bugattis, you've got like, it's all about the 9-to-5 grind and getting rich. Like the focus is on the individual. The focus isn't on the community. And he's like, that's where we need to sort of pivot to a lot more. And it's like doing some more of those, creating support for people that just isn't you. Like it's not always about you. Like we're so self-centered.
Yes.
It's all about me. I'm the man. I've like look at this and what I've achieved. But actually put it back to what you can achieve for others in your life, like the work you've done, with charity and like for your family. So I think the sort of hustle Instagram culture probably doesn't help that side of things at all.
No.
I've got another question here. Then we'll move to some quick fire questions.
I could talk till the morning here with you, man. Like,
Yeah, I know. This is so easy. We have to do around two. I feel like we're just like touching the surface.
Yeah. We're not going beyond the surface. No, we're not.
Yeah, we're walking on the road. No, that's a bad dad joke. Yeah, if I gave you like, let's say you got this microphone right now, and we've got a lot more streamers than we currently do on Beyond the Surface. Let's say there's millions of people listening.
Yeah.
What's like the one truth that you'd share to them? And let's pretend that this audience are like entrepreneurs. Like, what's that one truth that you'd share to millions of entrepreneurs out there in the world?
Wow. I don't know what the one truth is, but something that served me well is just be good. And I think there's more to expand on that, right? But be a good person. And what you just talked about, the community aspect, like put community, put things and people, have visions and goals that are bigger than you, that are not just for you. Look to serve people, look to do good work, look to take pride in the good work that you do, and not just kind of doing it for the sake of it, right? Don't just win a project so you can move on to the next one and so that you can get some money in the bank, but think, like, how can I make this the best project I've worked on? If you are, doing anything, just take pride in it and do good. Like, be a good human being, man. I think it's so hard. I think especially in the financial, kind of the career, the ambition, the drive space, and especially with some of the more kind of toxic social media culture that's part of that. That's, it's me at all costs, and if you don't like what I'm doing, it's your fault, actually. It's your problem. I think a lot of that just comes from insecurity and wanting external validation from people. And it's easier said than done. I mean, I think a lot of that initial post-crypto stage, I was probably a lot like that. I was like, hey, like, this is all the cool stuff I'm doing. I mean, I've deleted my Instagram. Like, I just have like a super small private one with my, family, close friends. Because, I mean, the other one before, like, I carved it. Oh, it's wanky, man. Like, it's me traveling the world and doing all this cool stuff. But nah, that's not really it. So I think just be good. And I mean, I'm seeing I think my life's almost a testament to like that part. I'd like to think that I try and be pretty good to people in most scenarios where I can. And, I've had so much good done to me, for me, and things that have changed my life. People that have gone, you know what, Omar seems like a nice guy, like, let's try and help him. That if I was a bit of a dick or more of a dick, would those things happen? I don't know. Not just in a work context. Obviously with the visa story and everything, in a work context, like, clients love working with us. They just see that I'll go above and beyond for them, and I'll, even if we're not contracted to do something, like, we'll just put in the effort and attention and care as people. I think it all kind of starts and ends with people. And it's not, I think there's an altruistic aspect of it as well. It doesn't have to be like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, what can you get from them later down the line? It's just, whether it's a spiritual kind of karma, I think it's just that if you do more good, if you're just good, you're helping people, like, you get that return back. And I think that was one of the things I learned from my family pretty young. It's like, if you do good, you'll get good. If you don't do good, you don't get good. And I think having both the good examples in my own life, but the bad examples in my dad's life, I think there's a very kind of contrast there. And I think that's why I try and kind of walk on the right side, hopefully. And I think people should kind of aim for that as well, because it's not a shortcut. You don't see the fruits of that labor next week.
No, it's a long game.
Next year. It might take 10 years. But it's sweet.
That's amazing, bro. And I think it's a really good note to sort of end the podcast on, and just want to say a massive thanks again for jumping on. Like, I've really enjoyed this conversation and stoked we could make this happen. You're a real inspiring individual, bro. Before we sort of move to quick fire questions and finish on a quote, where can people keep in touch with you and your mahi, bro?
LinkedIn. I mean, I think I was looking through my apps, like 80% LinkedIn now. But Omer Hazer, Omer with an E. Atlas Studios as well. You can find us there. I mean, we're still very founder led, so if you reach out, you'll probably find me. Atlas Studios, and then LinkedIn at Omer Hazer.
Awesome. Omer, what brings you true happiness?
Ooh. self-care. I love, I think nowadays what truly brings me happiness is kind of coming home, having a call with my mom, sister, kind of cracking some wine, cooking some nice yum food at home with my fiance, and watching TV and having a pack of chippies at the end of the night. It's nice. Petting the dog, it's just, self-care.
What is the meaning of life?
Ooh, have you heard of absurdism?
No.
Yeah, so it's kind of this belief that it's kind of like nihilism, but not as bad, like not as kind of bleak. It's that there is no meaning to things, and that we should create meaning in the face of the absurd reality of that, right? There is no meaning. Like, no one's come to rescue us. Like, nothing's happening. So just kind of, you're a ship out in the ocean, and you're not going to probably dock anywhere. So enjoy the ride. Like, make the most out of it. Create your own meaning, whatever that means for you. And again, do good. Hopefully it's good. Doing good is part of that. But yeah, I think just create your own meaning and like live it to the fullest.
I like that. I really resonate with that.
Yeah.
It's first I've heard of it. It's really cool. Yeah. Advice you wish you knew about when you were younger?
Persevere. Have confidence. I think nowadays I have so much more confidence in the work I do and who I am and everything and around that, because I see the results of it. But early on, I didn't, and I doubted myself a lot. So I think it would just be, if you truly feel like you're doing the right thing, just keep at it, persevere, and play the long game, because I think many people can agree with that things don't happen over the short term. Yeah. They happen over the long term, even though they kind of have for me. But, yeah.
If you actually, what does legacy mean to you?
To be loved by people who are close to me, for kind of my close family, my wife, my kids, to kind of go, he was good, he did good, and I look up to him, and like for them to miss me, like that'd be nice, because I think, it would suck if that didn't happen. But I don't really pay much attention to it. I feel like if I just kind of do good and focus on my own life, hopefully that comes with it. But I'd love to have a nice legacy, to be remembered and as someone who did good for their community.
If you could change one thing in New Zealand, what would this be?
To have more acceptance and love. I think not just New Zealand, I think globally, but just love thy neighbor, just be good to people like who are different than you, who might be different financial status, different religious beliefs, different political beliefs. I think there's just so much divide. And if we really look down and look inside, we're all the same. We all kind of want the same things. We all just want to be loved. We all want to feel valued, and have a certain level of comfort in life. And that's what unites us all. And I think most people tend to kind of get lost in the sauce with all the kind of small things and what you believe in versus what someone else might believe in. So just love each other.
Agree, bro. And what do you believe is the main thing that is holding back young people in New Zealand?
Might be opportunity on a global scale. But, I'm changing what I'm saying. I think it is a self-belief that you can do kind of way more, right? I think in New Zealand especially, one of the things I love the most out of New Zealand is that it's this relaxed kind of culture, right? Like I was getting like bald spots in my head in Turkey in middle school from the stress,
True.
Whereas in New Zealand it was like super chill.
True.
But I think with that comes some cons, is you kind of get a bit too relaxed and kind of knowing that you get out what you put in, If you're looking at that person putting in all the effort, all the work and going above and beyond, don't tear them down. Like chances are, like, I think ultimately a lot of things come to luck, but the harder you work, the kind of more luck you have, right? Yeah. So don't tear them down, because like they're probably going to make something happen out of themselves. So kind of give it a go yourself as well. Like, if relaxing is great, like having that. But anyway, I think just kind of know that if you have a certain kind of ambition and you want to achieve things that not everyone's doing, you got to do things that not everyone's doing.
That's right. Yeah, and a bit of sort of tall poppy syndrome is holding back a lot of young people.
I think all the answers tend to come to that, don't they? I think
do.
A lot of people have said that. Yeah.
Cool, man. Hey, we'll wrap up with a quote here from Toni Morrison, who's a novelist, and this is about invention. If there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. The same is true of any endeavor. If the solution you seek doesn't exist, go create it.
Love it.
Cheers, bro. Thanks for doing this.